Today on Under the Hat, we're going to discuss the new recruiting rules, the changes, and how it affects the recruiting landscape for coaches, for players, for club directors, and kind of share some better insight about what to expect with these new rule changes. So, Sam.
All right. So, obviously, one of the biggest ones is that babies, as I like to refer to them, so anybody before their junior year in high school, are not allowed to make an unofficial visit and meet with any sort of athletic staff member at this time. Now, again, as we talk about these rule changes, Kara and I want to make it very clear that this is about the Division I level. This doesn't pertain to Division II, Division III, NAIA, etc. Okay? So if you're a freshman or a sophomore, you can go to a campus and you can still visit. You're going to have to do a tour and go through admissions. You're just not supposed to be meeting with any member of the volleyball staff or any other athletic staff member for that time. Starting your junior year, September 1 of your junior year, one of the biggest rule changes is that you can actually go on an official visit. Unofficial visits are still acceptable as well beginning September 1 of your junior year. But coaches, if they are very interested in you and want to extend an offer, you can now go on an official visit starting September 1 of your junior year, which is quite frankly going to create a little bit of chaos when they're in the middle of their season and you're in the middle of your season. But that is one of the big rule changes that has taken place with all of this.
So what this doesn't mean is to sit back and wait and be patient, because as we were in Vegas over the weekend for SCDA's Red Rock Challenge, formerly the LA qualifier, as we talked to many of the college coaches, we actually didn't have one college coach tell us that they were going to slow down. What they said was that they were trying to find loopholes to get around this because they really had no intention of slowing down. What that means is having a middleman has never been more important, because you have to have somebody that can help facilitate communication between you and a coach. Getting on campus is still going to be extremely important, even if you can't meet with the athletic staff. And the reason for that is that it's the only way to help you figure out as a student athlete what you want in your college experience. So by getting on these campuses and doing these admissions tours, it really helps to put some things into perspective and give you some ideas about maybe what you want in your whole college experience.
Correct. And I think, Kara just mentioned the middleman piece. I think the camp piece becomes that much more important, because one of the other pieces of legislation that was passed is that you can go to a camp, and again, if you are, before you become a junior, that September 1, which is that crucial date at the D1 level, they're not supposed to be having a conversation with you about recruiting whatsoever. Now, obviously, that's where I think somebody like Kara and myself come into play, because if we're helping somebody saying, you need to go to this camp, that's because they really want you there, because you are high on their list and they want to do that evaluation. But again, if you're a baby, they're not supposed to be having that conversation saying like, hey, we want to make an offer to you, because again, that is now illegal with the new legislation that has been passed.
This is going to mean that communication with your club coaches and directors is going to be extraordinarily important, especially if you're not working with somebody in the recruiting world. And learning how to communicate, what you're looking for, learning how to communicate your needs, really being open and sharing and discussing kind of where you are with your academics in terms of your GPA and your test scores, and even describing some of the things that you're trying to achieve. So if you're using volleyball to get a leg up into a top academic school, for example, communicating that with your club coaches so that as college coaches ask them questions, they're more prepared to answer these sorts of questions.
Yeah. The other thing that needs to be discussed is the recruiting calendar has changed for Division I coaches. So in the past, we would be on quiet period or a dead period to the middle of January, typically right before the Martin Luther King holiday weekend, and there's always big tournaments throughout the country. That calendar has now changed, which means now that coaches are going to be on that quiet period and won't be out in full force until President's Day weekend in February. So it's giving coaches a longer break from being out on the road However, that just means that they're just going to have a shorter period of time during the main crux of the club season to get out there and do their evaluations. So they have a longer break. So that just means that, again, in the Division I world, you won't see a lot of coaches early on during the recruiting, the recruiting tournaments at various club events until that President's Day weekend when it's going to kick into full force. That's another piece that I think is going to take some time and some juggling to see how that all works out and how the coaches feel that they can work with it. There's, I think, going to be pros and cons to all of it. But I also think that, once President's Day weekend hits, that coaches are going to feel the pressure to be on the road a little bit more through the end of April 30th.
I hate this rule, for the record. I don't think it gives the quote-unquote work-life balance that the people that were, putting forth this bill or proposal is going to actually do. I think it's going to crunch things down, and I think that in a weird way they're putting more pressure, on the college coaches themselves as well as the athletes with all of these changes. If you think about being in the high school season, and depending on your high school and your program and how strong you are, there's going to be some serious challenges and political and repercussions for picking up and leaving during your season. But I have to tell you, you're going to be under more pressure to make a decision after September 1st, once you start taking these official visits, than you are now, to be completely honest with you. It's going to be a big deal. And so for you, with Sam talking about camps, and we're talking about this recruiting calendar and how things are evolving, it's going to be super important that you don't sit back and wait. You don't sit back and wait until September 1st. You're going to definitely need to be proactive throughout your sophomore year, especially getting on campuses, having discussions with your coaches and with the people around you to help you figure out what that perfect fit is going to be.
For sure. Right or wrong, volleyball has obviously moved to early recruiting. We've been on the phone with a lot of college coaches this week and have said, listen, we're in the full recruiting into 2021 or 2022. They're not going to slow down because of these rule changes. They're going to continue to evaluate and figure out what's going to be best. And again, players, you are able to reach out. You can still email coaches and set up those phone calls. That's still going to continue, okay? You make a visit to campus and maybe you go to admissions. They're going to find a way to let admissions know that you're a special player and they are really glad that you're on campus. Again, I think we're going to be providing a lot of assistance with that as well. So the recruiting piece isn't going to stop. Coaches aren't going to stop recruiting. And that active communication piece, like Kara was just mentioning, that still has to continue, because you need to make sure that you're getting people on their radar. I've had some of our younger clients say, hey, I sent these emails, I got this back. I said, remember, you're working to get on people's radars. You need to continue this, and that's why we're having you send these emails right now.
The thing, going back to the recruiting calendar and crunching everything down, I think, there's a lot of money on the line for the tournament organizers who organize these events and all the types of showcases and things of that nature that are out there, during this time period. It's now going to be crunched. And so another negative effect that I think is going to happen is that we're going to see even more tournaments stacked on top of each other. I think that it's going to become, some of the talent's going to become leaner out, even because there's going to be all these big time tournaments stacked on top of each other in order to get the college coach's attention. And I think that too is going to be one of the challenges to navigate through the process, and maybe one of the negative side effects of those calendar changes as well.
Yeah, I do think that if you're a Division II or Division III coach, you might actually like the fact that you're going to have some more time alone in the gym by yourselves evaluating kids. And that, again, we're talking about all these rule changes that are for Division I only. So I think that if you're coaching at the D2 and the D3 level, you're continuing this recruiting process, just as we talked to many coaches this weekend while we were in Vegas, and they're on Division III. They're looking at plenty of 2020 kids for sure. That's not going to change. They might just enjoy the fact that they get more alone time in the gym with some of these players, and kudos to them for that.
So club directors, any questions that you guys have in any way that we can help you with, gathering better intel on your kids and being able to be, be in a better place where you can have a better role in the process. I think it's going to be so challenging with these tournament and club directors that have so many kids that they're managing, and just trying to, facilitate communication with so many different players. I mean, I guess a lot of that is still the same, but there was always loopholes. Like, there's always ways to get around the rule changes.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying. Right? But again, I think one of the things that I don't want people to panic with all this, because there's no need to panic. It's just having the right plan of attack and being strategic with all of it. And I still think patience is still a huge key in this recruiting process. We've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people this week about that. And it's still about finding the right fit and the right place for you. So you need to make sure that you're doing your homework. Maybe this is going to give some people more time to do that, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I can tell you right now that there are plenty of coaches at the Division I level who are still looking to fill holes in their roster heading into the fall of 18. That's not going to change with the rule changes that have come about. So I just encourage you to take a deep breath, be patient, be active. You need to be doing what you need to be doing and getting your stuff out there. If you're not doing that, that's still going to be a detriment to helping you find the right fit at the end of the day.
For sure. That's going to wrap up for today's show. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions, hit us up. We're on Instagram at VBallRecruiter. On Facebook, you can find us at My Recruiting Solutions, and our website's myrecruitingsolutions.com.
Yes, and if you have any other questions and you're unsure and want clarification, please reach out to us. I have actually the PDF with all the rule changes. I'm kind of a nerd like that and would be happy to help you with that.
All right, awesome.
All right.
See you guys soon.
Juices.